I don't think that there's anything intrinsically more promiscuous about the gay community. Never have. But if you consistently, over a period of 2,000 years, drive people underground and give them a clear message that they can have any amount of sexual activity as long as it's in the most undignified fashion and in the least promising locations, then what can you expect? And then, of course, in the late 60s and early 70s, when the pressure cooker was opened up and the lid came off, people kind of celebrated their sexuality. That's all. And there was a point where it was almost politically incorrect not to be promiscuous. And I came onto that kind of scrutiny as well, you know. To a certain extent, people thought I should have been a little bit more active. But it just wasn't my nature. And I think there are people whose nature it is to be predatory, to be promiscuous, to be voluptuous. You know, I don't mean to put moral loadings into all these words. Some of them I would put moral loadings, but by no means all people who have a lot of sexual relationships are predatory or promiscuous in a non-pleasant sense. But it hasn't been my nature. I prefer to have an intimate relationship with somebody that I know and care about. And this kind of anonymous sexuality, I would not, certainly nowadays, find at all interesting or exciting. But I can understand, particularly for young people, the allure of this. But I think there are too many risks in it. Very free man's comment, so I don't know anything about them.
I heard him on the radio.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what his comments are, so I couldn't comment on them.
He said that 3/4 of those cases of sexually transmitted diseases that come before him were got in that particular venue and that particular practice.
What's that? What is it anyway?
Black hole.
I don't know what it is. Again, people who engage in these kind of sex club activities in what they call back rooms or dark rooms or whatever it is, again, they will be a particular stream of the gay community, but they're by no means representative of a majority of people. They're the kind of fast lane, sophisticated people, I suppose, or lonely people, or a combination of the two. But in as far as asking whether AIDS is gay people getting their comeuppance, I think that's the most appalling idea. And if you look at the situation where about 90% of the global infection is through heterosexual transmission, you'd have to say, well, there you are, see, is that the comeuppance for heterosexual behavior? Should we object to marriage?
I think it is. Now, do you think sexuality should be free range or should it be regulated? I'm not talking about homosexuality.
Yes, I know what you mean. I think that the restraints on this by the state are going to become less and less. I think they're going to be fought back. And I think that in terms of kind of the moral perspective, the state has less and less interest. Where they do have an interest is in the question of behavior leading to the rapid spread of disease. And I think that that is could become, in certain circumstances, quite a serious problem. The state no longer has the investment in population growth, in my opinion, which was the reason for a whole range of sexual attitudes. What else do I think?
No, where would you draw the line?
Well, I wouldn't draw the line for other people. I would hope that we could produce a society in which people would be inclined to draw lines for themselves.
What about pedophilia?
Well, there's a lot of nonsense about that, to be quite honest, and I can say this because I haven't the slightest interest in children. I found it a bit of a bore, to be quite honest, and I cannot understand how anybody could find children of either sex the slightest bit attractive sexually, because to me what is attractive about people is their maturity and the fact that they display the signs of sexual maturity, and I think that is, if I may use a much abused word, normal. But prepubescent children who lack any identifying characteristics of sexual maturity, I cannot understand why anybody would find them sexually appropriate. On the other hand, yes, they do, but in terms of classic pedophilia, as practiced by the Greeks, for example, where it is an older man introducing a younger man or boy to adult life, I think that there can be something to be said for that. And in terms of North African experience, this is kind of endemic. Now, again, it's not something that appeals to me, although when I was younger, it most certainly would have appealed to me in the sense that I would have greatly relished the prospect of an older, attractive, mature man taking me under his wing, lovingly introducing me to sexual realities, and treating me with affection and teaching me about life. Yes, I think that would be lovely. I would have enjoyed that. But I am sorry to say I would let down the next generation, because I wouldn't be slightly bit interested in people who are considerably younger than me. But I think there is a complete and utter hysteria on this subject. And there's also a confusion between homosexual behavior and pedophilia on the one hand, between pedophilia and pederasty on the other. And I mean, if you look, for example, at the way in which the vicious British tabloid press whipped up hatred against people who were accused of pedophilia and so on, and they misdirected them. And a man had his house burnt down. He was burnt to death in it. And I think he was. What do they call those people who look after your feet?
Oh, there was a
podiatrist or something.
There was a woman. What's the word for a woman? A child doctor.
A pediatrician.
Pediatrician.
Yes.
She was badly.
Well, there was a man who was actually burnt to death in his own house, who had nothing whatever to do with this area. And I think that the gutter press in Britain and in Ireland fan the flames of this kind of thing, and they dehumanize people and call them evil beasts and perverts and all this kind of stuff. Now, of course, there is a whole spectrum. In my opinion, the teacher, the Christian brother, who puts his hand into a boy's pocket during a history lesson, that's at one end of the spectrum. But then there's a person who will attack children of either sex, rape them, brutalize them, and then murder them. That's quite different. But the way things are presented here, it's almost as if they were all exactly the same, and I don't think they are. And I have to tell you this, I believe that the children, in some instances, the children are much more